All right, welcome back on our second podcast of the week with coaches. We're going to bring on Brett Ressler, head coach, Hackensack High School. He's been a head coach for quite a while now. I would say probably maybe around 10 years. He's been a head coach. Played, I believe, at TCNJ, I want to say. And he'll correct me if I'm wrong. Was a coach before he was at Hackensack at Mendham High School. Played his football at Hackensack High School, I believe, under Greg Toll.
Yes.
During that great run they had there. So he's really it's interesting. We'll get to talk to him about what it's been like returning to the old alma mater,
returning home.
Yeah, and leading his team there. Hackensack in New Jersey is one of the kind of storied, at least North Jersey's most storied programs. Huge history there from a football standpoint. So there's a lot to unpack there. And on a quick side note, I think we'll have I got Coach Ball game booked, and I should have Badland Chugs booked pretty soon. So that'll be some exciting different stuff to go into as we go. So it's been real great, doing these podcasts. And then one more side note before we bring on Coach, the short form style with what would you call this? The vertical style, Derek?
I guess.
Yeah, I've been testing it versus the landscape style, and this style seems to get a lot more views. So I'm not sure if YouTube is pushing it out more, like, what I'm saying, or maybe people are watching. My guess is I don't think that's the case. I think they're watching on their phone much more. And
100%. I think it's more accessible this way, so people just, you know what I mean? Plus, right. I also think that the recasts do better, obviously, right? Because the different timings and of whatnot.
The evening recasting in the evening. So without further ado, let's bring on Coach. Coach, what's going on?
Fellas, how we doing? Thank you for having me, man.
Coach, appreciate you taking the time, bro.
It's great to have you on. Give us, I don't know if I, did your background justice or not, but I want to let you go kind of in depth because obviously before you were at Mendham, you were coaching as well. So, and I'll bring it up because I know Coach will bring it up. Back when I had Schuman's Elite Training in Hackensack, he was one of my guys down there, and he actually you brought us a couple of those. I think you brought us some Ed Church's sons guys, right?
Yeah,
hockey.
Yeah. We did. It's been a fun ride, man. Full circle. I mean, listen, dude. It's a long way from the Schuman Ressler connection goes back much deeper than the establishment of this podcast. So if you go back to the family history, man, shit, we could really talk for a while. But at the same time,
do you know any of the? Do you know?
I got some of the tidbits. That's for sure. So I know the family, it runs deep.
Well, my father and his father are very good friends, and they taught together as phys ed teachers for, I don't know. I mean, Brett, we're talking.
I think it was
30 years, right?
At least. Yeah.
That's listen, we know phys ed offices
his father,
are small offices, bro.
Did your father go to Saddlebrook?
He did.
Yes,
so I think your father was my father's phys ed teacher. 4 or 5 short years later, after my dad graduated, a job opened up. He got hired into Saddlebrook, and then the rest is history, man. They shared a phys ed office on what is that, Mayhill Street? For
Market
Street.
Market Street.
Yeah.
I taught there.
There you go, man. So I
taught in the middle school for 1 year, bro. What an experience. Actually, it would be 1 year and a September until they let me out of my contract. But that's
God bless you, man.
And
it was wild, dude.
And Mr. Ressler, as I know him, because he was obviously a teacher when I was in school there. Mr. Ressler was the girls' track coach for incredibly long. At least when I was in high school, he was. He was for a very long time. And my father was the boys' track coach. And then eventually, Mr. Ressler stepped down from there. But and then my father did I don't know how they even called it, like a coordinator position or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when I think coached with him like a few years after that. But yeah, he was the girl. And listen, when I say championships galore, like Mr. Ressler was an unbelievable track coach. So our boys would be winning championships. His girls would be winning championships. It was like it was like unbelievable, you know. And then of course, we dated across the teams, and that made it even more fun because and my father would, you know, and his father would know all the things that were going on because they're phys ed teachers. And what do the phys ed teachers do half the time? They're sitting there talking about what's going on. So it's funny. But one of the funny things is when I coached with my father, but when I ran for my father, when my father be all jacked up for like a big track meet, he'd be like, "You guys don't go near the girls," and Mr. Ressler would be like, "What do you do when the girls want to like talk to the boy, you know, because they want to socialize, you know what I mean?" And here is our boys track team, and like if my father saw us like, you know, going over and talking, he would lose his mind, you know what I mean? But it was really really goes a long way. They're still good friends to this day. And so that's a quick history for you. I mean,
it is. We can go on and on, man. Like, you know, you bring that up. I remember, I mean, listen, you know, I was the little punk kid probably running around. I don't really remember so much being around Saddlebrook. I was pretty young at those times. But, you know, after my father had coached, longtime coached with your father over at Saddlebrook, my brothers and sibling and my sister were going into Hackensack High School. So then he ended up going over to Hackensack and started coaching my sister and my brother in track. Mostly my sister. My brother, you know, only ran track for I think 2 or 3 seasons. He didn't do the full 4-year gamut. But at the same time, you know, he took that success, and I hate it. And I'll give credit where credit's due. All the stuff he learned under your father and what those two built over there, and brought it over to Hackensack, and then, you know, worked under legendary track and field coach Ed Church, who, you know, what the track and field facility is now named after at Hackensack. It's now the Ed Church track and field facility. And, you know, worked under him as an assistant coach, and he coached multiple all-county athletes, all-state athletes, and Division I guys and girls over there, which was pretty cool. And that's kind of segues to where I am right now is, you know, I go back to when I was hired at Hackensack in 21 and, you know, talking with, you know, Darren Cooper at the Record. He's like, "Man, how long you been coming around?" I was like, "This is where I've been born and raised." You know, I remember, you know, jumping on the high jump pit during practices in 94, you know, with my father, you know, picking me up from school and things like that, and watching my sister run. And obviously my brother play ball for Coach Toll. And then when it was my time in the, you know, early 2000s, then it was kind of cool to be around at that time and do that whole thing. And then that kind of segued into how I got to know, you know, Coach Schuman here. Is, you know, I graduated from Hackensack. I got my, you know, was starting my degree in exercise science and ended up being another phys ed teacher, just like my father. Right. But I got some, you know, a field experience with Coach Schuman, you know, at the Ice House and at his facility that he was running in the upstairs area, training athletes and getting my start as like a strength and conditioning coach, which was really cool, and learned a lot and learned really how to get back into coaching. So it's funny what, you know, his father probably taught my father, and maybe my father taught him. He's now instilling it in me, you know, because that was my real first true work experience was for you know, Coach right there.
Incredible.
I know. And that was right as I was going to school at TCNJ and doing that whole thing, and then lo and behold, here I am, you know, full circle back.
And I think I had at the time, right before he passed, I don't know if you were in there when he was there, but Dodie Donnell. I don't know if Dodie Donnell was he doing.
Dodie was my you know, I was more of a defensive guy, but you know, it's high school football. Everyone's practicing both sides of the ball. So he coached the running backs, and I was playing fullback and got coached by Dodie. Dodie was an excellent coach, man. You know, University of Nebraska product. You know, there's guys up and down the. He's a legendary Hackensack name. You know, I mean, back in the 70s when they had Dodie Donnell in the backfield and another man by the name of Lee Larkins running the ball, those guys were the OGs of the 70s when it came to Hackensack, you know, their running attack.
No doubt.
Which was infamous because that was like statewide. Like everybody knew if you were playing Hackensack, like even me growing up as a young buck in Morris County, right? Like Hackensack was always in that top 5 of the state, whatever, or you looked at it and it was like Hackensack High, like, and they always had a run game. And that was just something, obviously, that was total opposite of where I came from at Butler, where we were spread wide and whatever. But you would look at Hackensack and be like, damn, these guys are always good.
Yeah, well, and Hackensack football has gone through like lots of transitions over the years. Like the 70s, they were real good. Then there was like a little dip in the 80s, and then Toll took over. It brought it back. It's been kind of back and forth. That's why they brought you in. You know what I mean? Because they were looking, I think, for really some good stability and to build for the long term with Hackensack, because it is such a storied program. What was it? What was it like? So being a player, this is always my first question for guys who go back to where, you know, they went to. What was it like being a player there and now coming back as a head football coach many years later?
It's unfinished business. That's what I like to call it. You know, obviously I have an immense sense of pride, and you know, yesterday we're at the Super Football Conference Media Day, and you know, I got asked a similar question, like, you know, somebody actually, and one of the reporters made a comment like, there's probably not a coach in here that has more pride in their program than you do. And I kind of took that in, and it kind of hit me a little later that, you know, when you step onto any football program, and you guys know as coaches, like you have to take pride in that because you want your kids to take pride in it, right? You know, that's you're pouring in immense amounts of time, energy, and all else in between into that program. And then when it's your alma mater, which basically molded and shaped you, now it's like it takes on a whole nother level. Like, you know, you talk about every coach, you know, has some sleepless nights, regardless if they went to their program or through their program or not. But then when it's really the one that built you and made you the person who you are, and you have direct connections with people in the community and families, and it just means that much more. You know, so it really is, I say it's a blessing, but also a curse, which is, you know, I always say that too. But at the same time, you know, with great expectations, you know, comes a great responsibility to carry through with that. And with pressure comes diamonds, you know, so it is what it is. And that's our mentality at Hackensack. We got to make sure it's been, you know, I lost the state title game in 2004. Our last title was 2000. We've won league titles along the way, but we want to get back and put diamonds on the hands of our players. And that's what we work towards.
Yeah, it's well, the alumni of Hackensack is it's maybe the biggest in Bergen County of all the public schools, as far as like famed alumni. The school's been around forever, and so I could, and the alumni come around at Hackensack, so people don't realize. Just because I grew up in Saddlebrook, and obviously
that's different.
Your connection and from track and knowing Mr. Church over all those years, and you know, knowing Benji, knowing all these different guys that are involved in Hackensack, Mike Biello, and so knowing how they all have a vested interest, especially the guys that played there. But even the you know, past teachers and past coaches, it's amazing. Like Hackensack, I mean, it's the county seat of Bergen County, right? And it's really the capital of Bergen County, and so everyone really has a vested interest in it. And so it's so interesting to me, because that's always, I remember over the years of coaching, like every time like the Hackensack job would come open, or something was going on in Hackensack, you would hear everything, you know, when you lived in Bergen County. And as a football coach, like you would hear it. Oh, this is going on in Hackensack, or that's, and what is that like? And obviously, since you're an alumni, you know people much better than probably anybody else, right? What is that like, and what kind of relationships do you have to build there?
I mean, listen, you know, if you look at my coaching staff, 10 of the 12 all play for Hackensack. You know, I have all-state running back Kaleem Hazel as my offensive coordinator, you know, an Eastern Michigan product. I have another all-state wide receiver in Walter King as my wide receiver coach. Yeah. So, who also, he played at Rutgers. I have a quarterback from the mid, 2010s, Jalen Wheeler, that's helping out with our QBs. Up until last year, I had all-state linebacker Mike Sanchez as my defensive coordinator. That's the one thing, and to even rewind even more, the people that work in Hackensack with me, like I work under my former coach and Coach Gordon Whiting, right? I work with the principal now. The school was my former OC and offensive line coach when I was playing, Jim Montesano, whose family all went through in the 90s. Celso King is another one.
Cool.
Yeah. So like, so it's like, and then not even to forget, like the guy, who also coached me in high school took over for Coach Toll, was Coach Ralph Doss, right? Who was also my football coach and wrestling coach. He's a hell of an asset to have in the halls, and he's still around. And you can't walk down a single hallway on First and Beach and not bump into somebody that's willing to talk football with you. And then you go back even more, like, I share a phys ed office with, a longtime assistant coach and TC&J alum and All-American there, Ressler, was, Mike Walker. So like, there's just athletes and coaches galore that just want to help you be successful and help the kids and have that Hackensack pipeline. And that's just the alumni connection. Now, from a game day atmosphere, you walk on Thanksgiving Day, like, and we've been fortunate these last, 2 times we've been home, that the weather's been great. So you're talking, the stands are packed. You got people along the fence. We always do our Hall of Fame inductions, so it gets a little crazy. And but it's all, that's what it's about. It's family, it's community, it's everything in between. So hold on, you're about to maybe meet one of the next comments. This is my daughter walking in. Right? Can you say hi, Reagan? Right. So, but that's what's the cool part about being a coach at Hackensack is the family aspect, because I can bring her around, and then at the same time I can enjoy talking with people that shaped me and molded me and get through that.
That's very, very, very cool. How old are you, Reagan?
Reagan, how old are you? Can you say 5?
5.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
yeah, I'm living the life, brother. I got one that just turned 1. Yes, I have.
Man, soak it in
It's
for sure,
brother.
So.
Girl dad, I'm gonna savor it, because I know it's like, these things only happen once. It's definitely been an eye-opening experience for me. But I love it, but like, you want that, right? Like, you want to be able to take your career and your passion and, kind of mold them where it is a family atmosphere, right? Like, and Dave and I, we go back, right? And we always talk about this, right? When we talk about like guys in college, coaching in college, and, just that rat race of, hey, my family's living here, but I'm here for the season, or, you're sleeping at the office. Like, then you have guys like, Dabo Sweeney that are like, you got to go. Like, if I see you in the office and you're missing your kid's stuff, like, we're going to have problems, right? Like, so there's a fine line between it. But when you can link it, especially high school wise, with your alma mater, where you have all of those outside and people coming back and all that other kind of stuff, like, it really just adds and shows your players too that the culture, and it's more than football, right? Because, you have guys these guys don't know anybody from even the 90s, you know what I mean? Like, they look at them and they're like, that guy's ancient. And meanwhile, you're like, I looked up to that guy, and he's now coming back for games, or he's, in your building as an administrator. Like, that to me, and for example, when I was at Mount Olive, all of my administrators were sports oriented guys. And that's not any knock on academics or any of that nature. It's just they got it and realized how important that was to the culture of not just football, but like the entire state.
Pick up those crayons.
It's funny. She's messing with the ice machine over here, so it's funny. She's filling up her water and going back to watching whatever she's watching, because we got a rainy day up here in Morris County, But no, but like you said, it is, high school football is, I think, an American pastime. Everyone talks about baseball, but like, you coach football or being a coach in any sport, like it's truly, in my opinion, everyone says college is the best 4 years. Now, high school has got to be the best 4 years experience of your life, because it shapes and molds you. You go through those awkward stages of coming into high school, trying to figure out what you're doing and who you are. And then by the time you leave, you kind of have a gist of, what you want to do in the world. And like you said, when you look at the family atmosphere of it, like that's what makes it work. Like you're not scattered all around the country. You're not spending, 17-hour days in the office during the season, coaching Division I ball, or, coming home late at night. And then the next thing you know, you got to answer DMs and texts from, recruits and things like that. It's like you can truly be a father, be a family figure that to be honest is very important in the world today, man. We need more people that are stepping up to be those role models for their kids.
Yeah, I mean, you even see, pro coaches and college coaches starting to force their staff to go spend time with their family. And I saw it like, Bruce Arians, said it to his guys, and Andy Reid is saying it to his guys. So those kind of things are really becoming bigger and bigger things. And obviously in high school, that's the great thing about coaching high school. You're going to work hard, but you still have to. You still have the ability to have a family, have a relationship with your family, which is a good thing. And that's I think it's super important.
When you got muted there.
Yeah, I got it. I'm back. When you go into that super conference media day, what is the conversation there that
your coach? Yeah, I'm losing.
They're looking to have.
I'm losing you a little bit there, Coach. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good now. You're kind of going in and out.
I'm going in and out. Oh. Can you hear me now? Okay. I don't know if I have. I look like I'm frozen, but I'll finish my question before I.
At least you're in an okay pose this time too. And just so you know, Brett, like that's not his piano.
No. That's definitely not my piano, and that pose isn't me getting ready to go get some Cheetos either. Well, so I'll put this question. I'll let you talk about it before I log myself back in and out. So I was saying, it's like when you go to that media day and they have all the coaches there, and Hackensack is one of the big, obviously big school story tradition. Like what are the things that like the media likes to ask you from a question standpoint? Because I think that like the first thing that comes to my head is, okay, well, the first thing I want to know is what kind of team does Hackensack have? Do they have Division I players? Those kind of things that come to mind. Like, are you losing any guys? In the modern era of things, like, do you lose any guys to parochials? Because I'm not even sure. When I was up in Indian Hills and we played you at Mendham, that obviously was a huge thing. Where I was, right? That was a big deal. That was one of the battles you had to fight on a regular basis, right? What are some of the things that they're asking you about? Hackensack football.
One, how close are we to kind of bursting through? And basically, I don't want to say restoring their glory, because that's the one thing that always has been a misconception. Hackensack has always been a perennial playoff team. Like, even though the records may not show it, like they've made the playoffs. Like Benji Wimberly did a tremendous job here. Getting kids into college, and also, establishing that winning mentality, or I even should say establishing, but continuing that winning mentality. And then even before him, people forget that Mike Mielo was here for a couple of years, right? And then before that was my coach, Coach Whiting, and then Coach Das, and then ultimately Coach Toll, who had in the 90s. It's just we haven't broken through that to get that championship, and that's just hard nowadays, man. Teams are so well coached throughout the state. And the way football is going is, like you said, and I'm sure you can see it in some numbers, like you're not getting that all-around athlete that you might have got in the 90s. You know what I'm saying? Like that sports specialization is huge.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say this, we're blessed at Hackensack where we do have a great rapport with track and basketball and baseball
And that's
and
huge.
wrestling. And then I will say this, we don't have a lacrosse program. So that's even another
Oh,
program
wow.
that you're not, that you're
Yeah,
not
but
fighting.
I could definitely see that, bro. I could definitely see that. And especially like obviously you coming from Mendham, right? Like, you know, that we're talking Morris County, like lacrosse is king. But I could 100% see that just because, you know, in order for lacrosse to happen, dude, you need a feeder, right? And Hackensack's a place where there's probably 1,000 other things to do, right? In terms of that, I could definitely see lacrosse like not being something that's on the radar.
Is Jimmy LaRose still doing baseball there?
He's actually, it's funny you bring up Coach LaRose. Coach LaRose is helping me out. He's actually coaching. He still teaches in our middle school, does a great job with their phys ed department, is not involved with our baseball program. He's involved with another school's baseball program, does a great job for them. But he's actually, I call him like my jack of all trades. Like he is the director of football ops, equipment manager.
Yeah, he's your DFO, man.
Yeah, he does. He'll talk scheme with me. But also at the same time, he can make a hell of a pizza, man. If you've been to his family's restaurant in Garfield, Barcelona's
is the best. Jimmy LaRose was. This is gonna seem unbelievable, but Jimmy LaRose, when I was a freshman at Saddlebrook, he was a varsity coach back then. You know, so
really, wow, that's awesome.
Yes. So he was. I think I can't remember if he was the head baseball coach, but then he went over and like he went for some years. He was at Fordham, and then he came back to Hackensack.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jimmy's great. He was the baseball coach there for years, right?
Yes. Yep. And so he actually was at Bloomfield teaching for a while, then came up to Hackensack, coached football, coached me for my later years, and then obviously was a teacher in the middle school at that time. Still long time football coach for us and does everything that you ask him. He's like our connection to those years. You know, he coached under Mielo, coach under Benji, you know, coach under Coach Das and all them. So he's seen it all. He's done it all. And he's definitely that veteran presence that you need on a coaching staff. Because I will say this, you know, we have some younger guys that are still, you know, a little bit wild and fiery. And he's the one that, you know, kind of keeps you in check a little bit, you know, which is important.
That's phenomenal. And you were saying, so you were talking about how like the there's not as many as the 3-sport guys, but you have, you know, obviously you have relationships with some of those teams. I'm curious because I see it a little bit at the youth level. Is your daughter your oldest?
Yeah.
So you're kind of maybe just beginning, but one of the things that I find interesting about youth sports is that football players will play multiple sports. And maybe some of the basketball players, but there's a lot of sports where they're trying to immediately, like from the time they're young, putting them in like one sport. So it does make it, I think it does make it harder when they come up to high school. You have to almost like re-recruit kids who may have played like different sports. Is that something that you do? Like, do you walk the halls still at Hackensack?
Hey, listen, my best kids are some of the kids that didn't come out until their freshman year or sophomore year. Like I will say that we have an all conference lineman coming back and Big Mike Nieves, and he was a kid that I saw play freshman basketball. And my defensive line coach also is a Hackensack alum, Rich Clyburn. He saw him too, and he's like, "Yo, we got to get this kid out." And he's been a starter on our offensive line now for 2 years, and he was all conference last year. And to be honest, he's drawing a lot of D3 interest and now even D2s because he's grown a little bit. He's going to get over probably 6'2". His dad's a taller guy, so he might get to 6'3", 6'4", and that's going to help drive him to get into college. And here's a kid that didn't really play any youth sports, you know, football particularly. But dude, I'm using your dad's old trick a little bit. You know, every now and then you got to break out a box of donuts, have an interest meeting. You know, kids come to practice for the donuts, and next thing you know, they're staying and they love playing football or they love lifting weights because that's again. You know, working with you and getting my background in more strength and conditioning. I'm a huge weight room guy. And between Coach Whiting in the athletic office and Mr. Montesano as a principal, and then our recently retired superintendent, Mr. Sanchez, they completely renovated Hackensack's weight training facility, and now it's this unbelievable 4,000 square foot,
wow,
fully loaded.
I heard you. I remember when you were talking about that, man. Like you're like, hey man, we're up in this, and I know that was
we're up in
the
the
strength
ante,
and
man.
conditioning stuff was always kind of like, your baby. Even when you were at Mendham, I can remember you trying to kind of build that up and instill that in those guys. Now look, we know Mendham's like a different world where every one of them's probably got a personal trainer and a personal chef. Like, but that's a different, you know what I mean? But like we both know, like, and Dave and I talk about this all the time, like facilities matter, right? And then and anytime you can now put something like that on display, not just for your program, but also the other programs, right? Like now the younger groups that are coming in, hey, look at this new facility, how much we care about not just the sport itself, but like all of this other stuff that goes into it. Like that adds a huge appeal. And that's like what people want to see, man. Like they love that stuff when guys are, upgrading and focusing on that aspect of it, because that stuff takes you beyond even when you graduate. Like you're always going to work in people love to work out and love that stuff. Like that's an appeal.
Yeah. I mean, and I think too is, and what I harp on a lot during our parent meeting to start the year is, I think I think, especially now being a parent, right, is you don't want to just see when the season's over, you don't want to have that disconnect from the team, right? So, we really preach that it is a 12-year development period. We're playing in the fall, but we do a lot of weight training during June, July, and August, and
12
obviously our
months.
August
Like
preseason.
you're talking 12-month programs.
Yeah, the only time we're really a little bit hands off is we still always play Thanksgiving Day, right? So the only time we're a little bit more hands off.
Do you still do that? Because I'm telling you right now, like it is basically, other than one or two games down here that are really like traditional, and Dave and I have been a part of it when we were at RBR, Red Bank Regional and Long Branch. I think it's like they just hit like 100 years on it. If not, it is the 100th year, something of that nature. So here Dave and I are going into this kind of looking at it like, hey man, if we make the finals, like, do we really want to be playing a game against Long Branch, which is a pretty good freaking team on the regular? You know what I'm saying? So like, do we really want to do it? But tradition. Now look, I went to Butler. We played a Thanksgiving Day game every year against Caldwell, and it was either for a conference chip or one of us was in the chip. You know what I mean? So I loved it, and I thought it was a great thing, especially when like you said, that alumni is lined up on a fence. So do you guys still play?
We still play it.
A
We
Thanksgiving
still play
Day
it.
game?
I believe this year is our 90th year of playing it. Obviously, we didn't play it during COVID, and obviously, I think there was a couple other interruptions along the way. But I believe this is the 90th meeting. Obviously, Hackensack has the upper hand in the wins-loss column. But
and you play who? Is it Teaneck?
We play Teaneck. Yeah.
So it's literally like you could punt the ball and hit their field, right? Like, am I mistaken on what that is?
Previously, some of the traditions was that the marching bands and the flag twirlers, they actually would march from either high school to the game, but now they've shortened it down and for the sake of obviously transportation detail and everything like that, and traffic on Thanksgiving is they only march from a select area.
Yeah, it's not like it's not like that's a main road or anything with people traveling in on Thanksgiving Day.
Bergen County, coming through, Anderson Street or Main Street in Hackensack, all that stuff, Queen Anne Road and Teaneck, I'm sure that's not an easy road to, shut down. But
no, but you are definitely like one of the few.
Yeah, there's only three.
I know like South Jersey, like Philly area still does some of it, right? But for the most part, like a lot of those games, man, have been straight up eliminated just based off the way the schedule is and when the state finals are, and just people just like, I don't know, it's something it's sad to me because I was a part of something like that, and like I loved it. I thought it was the greatest. It was my favorite game every year, no matter what. Yeah. And like that tradition stuff, like, and Dave and I talk about it a lot with, just the way how things are now with, kids leaving schools and transferring and all that. Like you just sometimes like guys don't understand that stuff, right? Like that tradition stuff, that camaraderie, like all of those things, like that's what you remember moving forward. And I think a lot of these guys are just so worried about me and where can I get into the next, how am I going to get to the next level, or how am I going to go to this school or that they kind of start to lose out on that locker room team tradition stuff. And it to me, it's just sad, and it's hard to continue to instill that culture, right? But like, that's part of it, right? Like, because that's what drives programs for success.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it too, like, you can go up and down. Like, the hardest thing I think people have to realize it with this Thanksgiving Day game, and we were a playoff team, but then we picked up like an exhibition game at the end of the season with Elizabeth just to fill that void, because like the first round of the playoffs really
you're a month
you're
out.
You're a month before, so you can yeah. So
like, I hate the Thanksgiving games. So I'll give you my polar complete opposite thought process on this. I absolutely hate the Thanksgiving games, and I played in a lot of them when I was in high school, and they were fun. I mean, they were great.
Yeah.
But to me, like, if your season's going well and you have a chance to make a run for the playoffs, that's frustrating that the Thanksgiving Day is looming there. And if you're having a rough season and you got to go 3 weeks and go to the Thanksgiving game,
well, that's miserable.
I hate that. So like when we were at Red Bank, I mean, listen, it worked out.
This is what I was just talking to.
It worked out for us because we played Long Branch. We beat the snot out of them, and it was great, But that was fun. But I could tell you that like those 3 weeks, like
they're the hardest weeks.
It was pulling teeth. It was like.
It's also when a lot of your team gets in trouble because they're like, what are we like? You know what I mean? There's nothing to look forward to that week.
We lost in the
you
first
gotta
round of
schedule
playoffs.
it like a certain way. It's just there's a lot to it. I hate it as a coach, loved it as a player.
Yeah. Well, like my thing too is you got to understand is, it's one thing if you have some rinky dinky tradition that's only been played.
No, this was a huge tradition.
I'm just saying in general. I'm just saying in general, like
years, if not,
dude, like this is like,
and I can go, for that, by the way, that I hated.
Oh, they did. That was definitely on the thing that was like, all right, do we want
to keep this guy or not?
He's like, oh, he wants to get rid of 100-year game. Fuck, and that'll get.
Well, that's it, dude. You can go down the list, and if you look at like Peaburg and Eason, I'm pretty sure if you ask the Peaburg
like
people,
there.
Yeah, Peaburg don't care about playing the NJSA playoffs. As long as they beat Eason, they don't care.
Right?
They
don't give it.
And there's the cool thing is like I've been at that game too. Back in 2013, I was an assistant coach under obviously arguably one of the best coaches in New Jersey history, and Bill Carpluck, right? He came back his first year and brought Mendham to the state finals. He made an unbelievable run, and we unfortunately did draw Peaburg, but we went and scouted them on Thanksgiving morning, and to be a part of that Thanksgiving Day game versus Easton at Lafayette is just an unbelievable atmosphere, man. I mean, you got guys wearing their varsity jackets from the 50s, 60s, and they're talking trash to each other, and it's like it is close to small town Texas football or small town USA football that you could have. And that's the one thing that has kind of taken away from football, because remember Thanksgiving Day games, that's when the season wouldn't start.
There was also a horse and buggy ones too. So
yeah, that's true. But and again, we had.
I'm teasing. I get it.
It's just you're preserving a sense of history that is not. It's harder and harder. You only have 3 in Bergen County now: Dumont and Tenafly, East Side. Yeah,
who's the Teaneck head coach? Who's the Teaneck head coach now? Is it Harold Clark, or is he gone?
It changes every year.
Yeah, Harold Clark.
Harold's the man.
He retired.
He retired.
They have an alum leading their program now, and we'll see how that works out for them. But
at the
same time, yes, it is his first year. So at the same time, we'll see what happens with down the road, because the state is obviously making it harder and harder with the way the state tournament lays out.
Because
again, you could be playing. Because you mean to tell me, like, we get on a run, you win a sectional title, that next week on Thursday you got to play a Thanksgiving Day game, and then come back on Tuesday to play a group final. Like, it's quick because they want all the games done. So There's only a few amount of schools that it affects, Hackensack being one. TNEC now out of the Ivy, there would be another, obviously, if they make a title run or something like that.
Brett, they're not gonna do something about it until you do it, right? Like until you literally have to win that sectional, play Thanksgiving, win that thing, and then go have to win on Tuesday. Then it'll be like, wow,
Hackensack just whips TNEC now, so they just beat them up. So,
but I don't even think that's like
now maybe
right?
maybe with TNEC getting out, maybe TNEC getting out of the Ivy, maybe they're starting to make a jump. I don't know.
Well, then you would have to now make a decision like how are we going to handle like Thursday's game if we're playing in a final on next Tuesday? Like what am I going to do here? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I just knew when I was at Butler and we played Caldwell on Thanksgiving Day, if one of us was going to the finals that next week, like there was no question, like both teams were playing their dudes. Like you were playing in that game. You weren't like sitting out like, no, we got the state final next week. Like, no, that was like, we're coming and we're going. But then again, it was usually for a piece of the conference title, or like I said, one of us was going to like the other finals.
Yeah.
I mean, I think,
there's been multiple years.
Sophomore year, we were both going to the finals.
Yeah. Well, there's been multiple years Hackensack had actually played TNEC on Thanksgiving and then had to turn around and play them in the state final.
Play them again, right? Like
stuff
that happens too. That's crazy.
That happened in the 90s, a few times. And
the Andy Heck days. The Andy Heck days. Well, I think one of the different and talk about this in Bergen County. I'm curious your thoughts on this because you're one of the programs that has obviously continued to be able to sustain. But TNEC, what you brought that up, used to be a powerhouse, right?
Beyond.
But a lot has changed there. And a lot of it has to do with like they play. I think they play in like one of those youth leagues where there's a lot of all-star kids, and so they kind of bring in kids from the outside. They had, at least I remember Harold was telling me he was trying to get it back to where it was like in a regular town league because it was better for them to keep town kids. But I didn't know if that, I'd left. I don't know if that had happened because, but TNEC is not what it once was. I'm sure they have the ability to, because obviously TNEC has always had some really good athletes over the years, and some really good football players. But like Hackensack is much more it's bigger. It's a bigger high school, but much more stable as far as their athletic department. It's become over the years, what was once like these were the two powers. This is kind of it's a little history lesson here, Derek. These were the two.
No, I know.
Like in Bergen County before the parochial, like
these were the
Bergen
two
Catholic
spots.
St. Joe's. It used to be Bergen Catholic St. Joe's. They got the guys they got, and that's kind of how it was. And then you had Hackensack TNEC, right? And like they were like. And then there were others that were powerful, but like that was like the big, and then JIL rivalry back in the old days, and all the way up through when you were playing. But what has happened is with the Super Conference, and TNEC has kind of had a dip. They were in the Ivy, and I think they did pretty well in the Ivy, but but they're not.
Well, now they're the Super.
They're not the same. So like. And that's, by the way, that's my own. If I was a TNEC, if I'm a Hackensack alumni, I want to play that Thanksgiving Day. I'm right now because there's no doubt like we could have bragging rights over TNEC, have a better chance of bragging. If I'm a TNEC alumni, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how many times is Hackensack going to whoop us? It's really interesting. The Thanksgiving debate. I don't know how we've gotten so far on it, but the Thanksgiving debate is definitely a true real thing, because when you talk about football in general, like getting kids out for football, in the old days, the Thanksgiving thing was a really, really big, that tradition was what helped get kids out for football. So you are trying to get some traditional things, and it is a lot harder in the Super Conference because, everyone's, there's so many teams in it, and it's not the same structure that it used to be back when you played. And back when I played, like when I played at the BPSL, like you played, the same teams every year. You knew who you were playing, and you look forward to that. That's what's changed a little bit. The Super Conference is magnificent in itself and what it does, but it's also lost some of the luster and as far as like the actual traditional rivalries.
Yep.
That's why I do think, the Hackensack fans and maybe the TNC fans want to hold on to that, because you know what, like, there's still one rivalry that we have. Like, we no longer have some of the old traditional Hackensack rivalries that we used to have. Now, at least we still have one. Is that kind of a little bit part of it, or?
I'd say, you know what, the biggest thing is after this, I think we got to get back to, talking ball a little bit, but with the Thanksgiving game is,
I know.
At the end of the day, it is.
Eric brought it up. We'll put it out there.
And the Ivy did exactly what it's meant to do. It's meant to help revive programs a little bit. Like Teaneck you're right, did fall on some hard times. That's why they're in the Ivy. They had success these last 2 years in the Ivy. I believe they've gotten, just going off the top of my head, I think they have 14 wins in the last 2 years in the Ivy. So 7 wins each year. Which is good for their program. That winning boosts numbers, winning boosts morale, winning boosts a lot of things for teams. And that's what's great for us. Like, doesn't matter really what year we're having overall. It's always that, like, oh, well, Teaneck did this in the Ivy. Hackensack, did this in a regular season. Like, what's going to happen? And it's that healthy banter between the towns and kids. That's what sports are all about, like, oh, this is the year, or no, it's not. Like, it goes back and forth in the old coffee shops and barber shops and around town and this, that. And what's cool is I actually have one of my coaches who, he's actually the girls basketball coach at Teaneck. He's on my staff as a coach, Coach Brad Allen. And, he played at Hackensack, and same thing. He sees it from both sides. Like, when it's winter season, he's all about Teaneck, athletics. But when it's the fall season, he's all about Hackensack athletics, and so on and so forth. But that's what Thanksgiving's all about, man. It's a healthy rivalry. It keeps the tradition, holding on to the tradition of yesteryear, and allows us to kind of put it on display, a thing of the past that isn't really around anymore for a lot of schools on Thanksgiving morning. It's a homecoming for everyone. And when you win, it's great. And unfortunately, when I lost as a player, that turkey is the worst tasting turkey you're ever going to freaking have, man. So,
Who do you guys have on the schedule this year coming up?
Arguably we're, you could say we're in one of the hardest conferences in the state,
Yes,
from
you
a
are.
from a public school standpoint,
Dude, you got
look at
some
our conference.
hammers.
Yeah, we got Northern Highlands. We opened up Northern Highlands in conference play, followed up by Wayne Valley, followed up by Ridgewood, followed up by Ramapo, and then obviously who's the team I'm missing here? No, that's it. It's only 5. Only 5 teams. Yeah.
And then you got Passaic, Kennedy, and Barringer sprinkled in there with Eastside, who's done some things.
Yeah, Coach Maggs does a great job at Eastside, man. He's a great guy and a great person for that job, and I have a lot of respect for him. And obviously, I would have loved to see, that long-time traditional rival and old school NHL rival with Clifton on the schedule a little bit, but that didn't work out. There's times we played Passaic County Tech.
Who's been a hammer.
Yeah, so we always, at the end of the day, like, Hackensack, we don't duck smoke. If people want to play us, we play them. Just name the place and time and we'll get it done. Obviously Barringer is new to the schedule. We haven't played them in a pretty long time, but however they made the schedules, they matched us up. And obviously Teaneck is always at the end of the year. And the one thing, I'll end with this, that game is very, competitive, for a better term, right? It gets heated, it gets passionate, and that's
fiery.
Because, and I'll say the same thing, man. For a lot of kids, it's the last time they're ever going to put helmets and shoulder pads on. It's the last time they can ever hit somebody with all their might and ability and not get arrested for it. They can do that the next day to that same kid.
Stole my line.
And they're gonna get arrested for it or something like that. Like, for, again, a lack of a better term. It's just, football is a physical sport. And that game lets out physicality on both sides of the ball, and that's what it's about. Eastside and Kennedy are the same way. And when the parochials used to play it, it's the same thing. Bergen Bosco in the finals. That's a physical game, man. It's passionate.
I've been a part of that one, dude. That's incredible. It's the only time I've ever felt an outdoor stadium shake was playing those two. And that was at Overpeck Park, right?
So there you go, man.
I'm just telling you, how rivalry games get, man.
It is. It's Ohio State, Michigan, man. Yeah. It's Ohio State, Michigan.
And I'm fortunate now to be a part of one down here, right? Like, where I'm at now, Brick Township
Yep.
against Brick Memorial is
Oh,
become
yeah.
like a big time rival, and they don't screw around. Like that's week 1, right? Like, and we
Mhm.
don't even have a week 0 game. They do, right? But like just to kick off that first one, it's like boom, here you go. You're playing the dudes on the other side of town, and it's like
Yep.
old school, like like even like a Wayne Valley, Wayne Hills type thing,
Yep.
right? Like that used to be like where. And I always diagnose rivalries by like both sides have some clout in it. Like it's not just like one team always wins, but even when even when it's unbalanced in that fact, like like these dudes are coming to play. Whether it's 0-10 against 10-0, it's gonna be a physical game. Like that's just what that stuff brings out, man. It's awesome.
That's it. That's why rivalries are so important whenever they decide schedules and things like that. That's why those perennial powers and those perennial things are so important when you look at scheduling. Like and I'll talk from a Morris County standpoint. Like at the end of the day, Roxbury playing Irvington or something like that, but Roxbury playing Randolph, yeah, that's a game.
You're looking at like
and I'll go back to
Mount Olive Roxbury, like I'm saying, like Mount Olive West Morris, like
yeah, and
like
I'll go back
anybody
to
against
like
West Morris seems like a rivalry game. You know what I mean? Like, and you've been a part of some of those.
Yeah, I've been a part of those traditions and
those
this
long-time coaches, right? Like those guys that have been there for a long time and are just like I call them just steady eddies, right? Like even when they're supposed to be bad, they're good. Like those, and it's kind of like I always equate being down here in the shore to Morris County football because that's kind of the levels you're getting, right? And those, but the problem with the shore down here is every year they redo the schedules. So it's not even like a home and home. Like, all right, you were better this year, you're bumping up, or all right, you were bad. Like, I mean, where I just was, we played one school on the road 5 years in a row. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's not that whatever back and forth, but it's definitely a big part. But you see it from the NCAA, right? With like the Big Ten. Now all of a sudden you got USC and UCLA and Oregon.
Rutgers is going out to USC, right? For like that game.
Or like, hey, Rutgers has a shot to win a lot of games because they're not playing the top 5 teams in the Big Ten this year, right? Like, I don't know, dude. Like, Rutgers gets to go play UCLA in the Rose Bowl, like for a regular season game, like. Does that take something away from it? I don't know.
Coach, what is your youth program like now these days as a feeder for Hackensack? What's the situation there? Is that are you getting a ton of players still from the feeder?
I think one thing we have to recognize too is just how cities around the country and also around New Jersey are evolving, right? Just like everything changes. So we still have our long stay, Hackensack junior football program. They run everything. We always get a steady slew of players from them. The biggest thing is people got to realize that Hackensack for a long time had Maywood, the town of Maywood, going to Hackensack. We don't have Maywood kids anymore, right?
Oh, that doesn't happen? Where do they go to school?
No, Maywood now goes to Beckton. They drive down Route 17 to go to Beckton.
Why? Is there a reason for that? Like, is it politics?
Lack of a better term, probably politics. If it don't make dollars, it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense, right? So it might be that. That was all before me. That was all. Those wheels were set in motion before I got the head job.
Now, as an alum, did you get like Maywood, were Maywood kid? Like,
oh yeah,
because look, you can divvy it up and be like, hey, this kid's from Maywood, he's that way, or this guy's from that town, he's that way. Were Maywood kids a big part of the program for
Maywood?
Different way to word it.
Yeah, and I'll be biased, man. I grew up in Maywood. Yes, I went through Hackensack, but and I spent the majority of my time in Hackensack. But I lived in Maywood. I grew up in Maywood. Went through Maywood, Maywood public schools till 8th grade. Then went to Hackensack for high school. And if you go down the list of Hackensack alumni, like
Maywood
pulls some weight. There's Maywood pulls weight. Yeah, exactly. And we have this is that healthy conversation you have in the coach's office about the Maywood kids versus Hackensack kids and that who's the best Hackensack athlete
like
kid really,
kids from Maywood play the wood, bro, like they can hit like
exactly.
This guy, that. It's the same thing at Butler because you have two towns that even small Butler, you have Butler and Bloomingdale, and they've since merged the youth organizations, which I think is one of the greatest things ever, right? Because up until 8th grade, both towns had their own youth programs. So you never played with some of those guys until you got to high school, right? And they've since merged that, and it's just only helped,
which is huge,
everything, right? Because now you're talking, all those kids are playing together from freaking, second or whatever grade. Like we had Iggy on yesterday, Coach Ig who's now at Ramsey. He lives there, right? And his youngest is like 4 or 5, and he's playing in the flag league because he lives in Bloomingdale. And it's just it adds that whole tradition, and you can start it sooner where now your guys are kind of linked up and moving forward. That's crazy. I didn't know Maywood is now going to Beckton.
Yeah, so obviously that limits our some of our numbers coming in, and puts heavily on things from Hackensack, South Hackensack, and Ressler Park. So but at the end of the day, we are a big school. We have to, and that's when
you're still circling back to right?
Circling back to Coach Schuman up there, like got to recruit the halls, man. Got to go into the gym classes. I'm a phys ed teacher for a reason. I like to be able to talk to kids and see what kids are athletes.
The best part about it.
And try and get kids out, because at the end of the day, that's high school sports. Like this isn't. I think the one thing now you're seeing, especially in 2024, is there is such a divide between those, even the Group 5 schools and then the non-publics, right?
Crazy.
So we still live and die with recruiting our hallways and not worrying about, going out and getting the best kid from this town at this age. And, we recruit our kids, we know our kids, we recruit our own halls, we recruit our hometowns, and, make sure kids know that there is a pathway to a solid future coming through Hackensack. Like we have the best facilities now. Name a school in Bergen County that has a pool on site. We do pool. It was 90 something degrees, 100 degrees with the heat. We're all right, cool. We're not going outside. We're going to go do a pool workout.
It's awesome.
We're going to go in our 4,000 square foot weight room that's air conditioned and get it done. There's already talk about converting one of our gyms into an indoor, and putting turf down and figuring out a way to make that work. There's early stage planning to put a bubble in at one of the fields at one of the Hackensack schools, just to alleviate field space and make sure it's year round available for kids.
I mean, look,
that's
I
where the benefits come into play.
Mount Olive, right? Like, you saw that, like, and it's just, you just have to have the guys that are willing to, like, look at it and say, hey, we can use this for not only our students or whatever, but we can also use this to turn a profit in terms of
space is an issue at Hackensack. That's
all. Yep, you're gonna have to, like, Union City put something on a roof.
Well, exactly. Which, by the way, is one of the best places to play, man.
Phenomenal. I love the Crow's Nest, dude. It's awesome.
Yeah, that is a great place to play. Unfortunately, we came out on the short end of the stick last year, playing Union City in the first round. But man, what a cool facility, and what Coach Valdez has done. Yeah, Coach Valdez has done a great job down there.
Yeah, congrats to him, because he just got into, I believe, the Hudson County Hall of Fame, or he went into something as a player. So kudos to him, Coach Wilbur Valdez. But, like I said, like, and we even talked about it before we got on air, right? We're talking about, like, there's just high rises everywhere. There's not much, and like Dave said, there's not space to go and be like, oh, look at that open field over there. Let's just, put something there. Whereas at Mount Olive, that was like, there was ample amount of space to be like, all right, hey, let's throw the bubble up over here, or hey, we'll redo this field here, right? Like, space matters.
Yeah, and if you look, go ahead, Coach. What do you got?
No, I was curious because like some of the other schools that like in Kennedy East Side, right, in Patterson, they have like multiple
they use the middle schools.
No, multiple youth programs, right? So like Silk City's like kind of like an all-star team thing. Then they have the regular Patterson teams that one team plays in the independent league, another one plays I think that league with like Riverdale and all them, and then Indian Hills and stuff, and then another one plays something else. Like, I didn't know if is Hackensack all one thing, or do some of your kids
all one thing, but there will be kids.
Or do they play in
they do. They do. We have some kids that play for some of the Silk City. I believe another one's Bergen County All-Stars, right? That's another one.
Yeah,
that's up there, But the biggest thing is my job as a head coach now in the 21st century is I got to know who's playing where.
Right.
And I got to make sure they
those games.
Yeah, and I got to make sure they know me and make sure they know that I know them, and I do. I have a running list. I have a running spreadsheet of who's doing this and doing that, But at the end of the day, that's where myself, Coach Whiting, our, superintendents of schools and principal, like facilities are huge, getting kids to see Hackensack is huge, and
Whiting the AD there
he
now?
is the athletic director.
That's
He's the athletic
Scooter,
director.
right?
So,
Scooter? Yeah,
yep.
okay.
Yep. So, and I was blessed to have obviously coach his son his senior year, and his son, etched his name into the record books. Yep. He had 7 touchdowns in the game for us,
yep.
6 in the first, 6 in the first half. And, we came out, that was against Passaic in 21. Nice. And I told him, first, again, because I do believe in, obviously there is a series of sportsmanship as a coach. And, I said, Kurt, you're at 6 right now. You're going to get one more drive and that's it. And sure enough, that's when he popped number 7 on the third. Believe it was a 3rd and long too. He hit and broke that record, because that record, you had some Hall of Famers, some legends that had 6, guys that are, Division I All-Americans, NFL guys that, you're talking Rashidi Brown that had 6. You're talking Billy Harris had 6. Yakimo Brown had 6. Kaleem Hazel had 6. It's the OGs of the running backs at Hackensack, and
he names that bomb.
Yeah, and now I was like, all right, I talked to Coach Whiting, obviously being a former head coach, and it's funny, he actually got on the phone because Billy Harris was his godfather, and he lived out in Colorado, was an All-American at University of Colorado, and was drafted by the Giants. Back in the 60s, I want to say. He got a word spread out to him that, hey, Curtis just had 6 touchdowns, and Billy Harris is like, hey, if there's one person that could break it or should break it, it should be a son of Hackensack, and that's Curtis Whiting,
awesome.
Whose family all went through, which was really cool and a special moment for me, my first year, so just wanted to make sure, you always pay homage to those legends and OGs before you, because you brought it up back, a little while ago, coaches. Hackensack's been around forever. Our first football team was 1902, so that's one of the battle cries we always tell kids, like, hey, listen, man, like, if this ain't for you, this ain't for you. But at the end of the day, like, there's a standard you have to live up to when you put on, the blue and gold. And regardless of how you feel about it, I said, football is going to be here whether you like it or not, and it's going to be here after you, and it's because it's been here before you. And if you don't want to live up to it, there's the door, kind of deal, and that's kind of how me and the coaching staff, live up to those legacies and such.
Oh yeah, Hackensack, the athletes, the tradition, it's definitely second to none in North Jersey, and everybody knows of Hackensack. So it's quite a thing to be the head coach there and to build it up. And it is interesting that you have to now the way that Bergen County is, and I guess in Passaic County, you have your players that play here, and then you have players that are playing on like all-star teams. You gotta track them all and build relationships with it, because that has changed a lot. And it's obviously beginning to change everywhere, but it's changed a lot in North Jersey, because the kids will play in those like all-star things, and then they'll play in another team for traveling, to Florida or something like that. And you'll hear like, oh, that kid's from Hackensack. Yeah, we definitely want him, right? So yeah. It's so interesting how that all works, and I definitely, the hallways in Hackensack have always been recruitable and will always be recruitable to the end of time, because it's just you have so many kids that I used to always do the same things, even Saddlebrook and other places, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those places where you could have a kid that was playing basketball throughout youth, didn't play any football. All of a sudden he comes in, you're like, wow, this kid could be a phenomenal football player, not just a basketball player. And Hackensack has such a big tradition in basketball, right? So a lot of kids may start out in there, and then those are kids that can become football players for you. And there's other sports as well, obviously wrestling, but there's so many good sports there that you're able to be able to find kids, just being there and being a phys ed teacher and being able to be around those guys. It's really, really awesome. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. What is the outlook for this season?
I'm going to go very simple for you, man. It's 1-0 every week. 1-0 every week. I will say this, high school football, and as you guys know, it's a game of depth. It's a game of staying healthy. You're going to have your kids that can play varsity ball and that will be ready to go week in and week out. It's their ability to make sure they can stay on the field and limit the mistakes and not beat ourselves. So it's always 1-0. We are steadily, getting back to where we need to be. We like our schedule. We like our league. We like our kids, we love the support of Hackensack. And if we have that, we're just trucking along, man. We don't get too high, we don't get too low, and we keep going, man. Like Coach said, man, steady Eddie, man. I hope to be one of those steady Eddies one of those days, man.
That's it.
If I can do that, stamp a check mark next to my name as a successful coach in my book, because wins and losses are great, championships are great, but this, it's making sure those kids that come through, they know that, you care about them more than just, whether or not they can block, power, or counter Trey. It's whether or not, you see them in 10 years from now and they're not, idiots running around town, and they're productive people in society that, are giving back and leading by example,
No doubt about it. Well said, Coach. We really appreciate you coming on today.
No doubt, man. Appreciate you guys.
Football. Yeah, no, it's been great. We wish you the very, very best. And I'm sure you guys will continue to stay on that upward climb as you keep building the program up. And it's exciting to see. And, people don't realize, because I remember we played Benji Wimberley that COVID year.
Yeah.
But that whole year, I remember.
Yeah, with no practice.
No, but I remember Benji telling me how, because we were dealing with the similar kind of thing, how difficult it was that year in Hackensack. And there really had to be when you came in, there really was a rebuilding that had to happen because COVID affected different programs differently. So really great what you're doing, because I remember how upset Benji was, how everything was going for him. And that really it required a rebirth, in the program. And you've really done a great job of doing that. And, people don't realize how COVID affected some of the programs based off of decisions. It had nothing to do with the kids or the coaches or even, it may not even have anything to do with the administrators per se. It really just kind of some of the decisions that got made because people didn't really know the answers and they made decisions. It had effects on some programs. And some programs had harder to, it took a little while to come back. So you've done a great job of really building that right back up. And kudos to you for that. And, obviously much success in the future.
Appreciate that, man. And again, just briefly, I'll touch on, just COVID in general. I mean, I hate to say, or hate to even look back and think people are judged on those COVID years. It's because I think it's just a blessing that kids got to play. You look at the cities were shut down. People are this or that. Wins and, like you said, wins and losses aside, you guys were playing with a day of practice. Like I remember playing Passaic Valley when I was at Mendham, and I only had 14 kids on the sidelines because I had kids, that were whatever their pod was compromised. Remember you had to practice the pod, this, that, whatever it was. All those crazy things.
We shook the tree on that one.
Yeah, so it's like, I couldn't play a game, and I'm bringing up freshmen that, were not ready to play a varsity game, especially against Passaic Valley. But, we went up there, we competed, we played hard. We ended up losing by 3 points in the fourth quarter, but it is what it is. We played ball and Coach Wimberly, again, is just a tremendous asset to have in my corner as
he's great.
As a coach, as a person, and just as one of those steady Eddies back, that just has does coaches for the right reasons.
That's, I think, one of the most important things, and has continued to do it right. And now he's moved up to being an assemblyman. We've had him on, right, and we talked Patterson. We talked everything from Patterson Catholic to politics, and it was, he's phenomenal. His son does some good things too, and with all his stuff, and he's just a great asset to have. It was crazy. When I was at Bosco, we played Hackensack, and that's when I believe one of his sons was on the team and had just transferred from Bosco to Hackensack to play with his old man. So I saw it like at the start of when he took over, and then to see him obviously when we were with Dave at the end of it, you could just tell that like it was taking its toll and like something needed to be done with Hackensack itself. So, and look, and you and I've known you since you were up there in Mendham and whatnot and playing Mount Olive every year, and it's just like it was good to see you go home because I think that's exactly what they needed.
I appreciate that, man. That was actually my first win as a head coach was against Mount Olive. So
there
back
you go,
in 2016, man, my first
You're
year.
Welcome, dude. You're welcome, bro.
I still have that. I still have that game ball somewhere. That's one that actually.
You want to talk about the biggest shit show of my life? Like that might go down in history. Like,
yeah, man.
But good times,
everything.
Man. I appreciate you coming on, dude.
No doubt, man. And like you said, man, everything happens for a reason. You know, I believe in that. But nothing but the best to you guys, and thank you again for having me.
Make sure you give my girl Danielle her props, bro. She's one of the best trainers in the she is phenomenal.
Without a doubt. Yeah, she does. We're very fortunate to have her, and we actually have another full-time that's just as good now. Deja Black. So we're fortunate to have two full-time trainers. So
it's awesome. That's amazing too. Good job, man.
I'll catch you later, my man.
Buddy.
We'll see you soon. Have a great season.
Absolutely.
Hey, be good.
Best to your father too, Coach Schuman. All right.
Thank you. He's doing well. He's making progress.
That's all that matters, man. That's all that matters.
Absolutely.
Thanks, buddy. Be good.
All right, that was great. That was really great. I realized it was raining because I can't see from the basement. I think that's what was like all kinds of.
Oh, it's horrible out.
Yeah. That might have been why I was having.
I'm dealing with. They're dealing. There's all kinds of stuff going on down here.
Yeah. Great podcast. Great talking to him, and then we'll be back
Friday.
Coach
Dunn
on Friday, which will be great, dude. Get ready for a ride. So that'll be really great. Let's get off, and we'll see you guys next time.